In the world of celebrities, there are secrets that never get written about in the newspapers, never get spoken into a microphone, but get whispered about for decades. Outsiders looking in only see the glamour, the fame, and the money. But behind the curtain are complicated relationships, private secrets buried in the shadows, and the truth only comes out when someone on the inside finally speaks up. At the age of 86, Smokey Robinson, considered one of the most powerful and knowledgeable figures in the soul music scene, shocked an entire era when he named 11 famous black male artists who were actually gay. These stars had been seen as symbols of masculinity, melting the hearts of millions of women with their carefully crafted, ultra-attractive stage images for decades. But it turned out it was all a lie. 11. A Ronnie White. The drunken nights and same-sex confessions in the Motown studio forever changed the friendship between the two pillars of the Miracles. Ronnie White was a core member of the Miracles, the man who helped Smokey Robinson lay the foundation for Motown and co-wrote the legendary song My Girl for the Temptations. In the early 1960s in Detroit, the two of them still had no fame, no money, only failed auditions and big dreams in their hearts. At the end of August 1960, after being rejected by 2 record labels, Ronnie White invited Smokey Robinson back to his house on the east side of Detroit for a drink. That night was quiet. The room was filled only with the sound of the fans spinning and glasses clinking on the table. The atmosphere was heavy with the weight of failure, and Ronnie drank heavily. After sitting in silence for a while, he started talking about secrets he had never told anyone. Ronnie told Smokey that he had once had a secret relationship with another male artist in a jazz bar. Smokey was stunned, thinking he had heard wrong. But Ronnie kept going, describing the short-lived affair. Then, suddenly, his voice slowed down. He looked Smokey in the eyes and said he had been attracted to him since they were teenagers, from his voice to those deep, soulful eyes. Ronnie even placed his hand on Smokey's thigh and whispered suggestive words. Just once, so they could be closer. Startled, Smokey immediately pushed Ronnie's hand away and left the house right then in the middle of the night. Later, Smokey said it was one of the most awkward moments of his life. But he forgave him because he thought Ronnie was just drunk and desperate after the failure. Their friendship was too old, filled with too many memories to throw away over one night. Time passed, and in March 1964, after finishing the recording of My Girl at Hitsville, USA, another incident happened between them. Around 8 p.m., the studio was almost completely dark, with only Ronnie and Smokey left inside. Ronnie had been drinking again out of excitement over the fresh track. Then he started talking about his very strange personal secrets. He said he liked wearing women's black silk underwear under his jeans. Then he described a recent dream where Smokey held his hand right on stage. Smokey sat there speechless. Ronnie didn't stop there. He went into vivid detail about the intimate scenes in the dream, speaking as casually as if he were talking about the weather. Smokey slammed the table in frustration and told Ronnie to keep that secret to himself. But even though his reaction was harsh, Smokey didn't cut ties with him. Ronnie was an important co-writer and the person who had built everything with him from nothing. From that day on, though, Smokey made sure he was never alone with Ronnie again. They still worked together, still wrote songs, still had success, but an invisible wall had gone up between them. Smokey never imagined that his tolerance would let things go even further. In early July 1967, during a tour in Chicago after the show, Ronnie drank heavily. In his drunken state, he suddenly pulled Smokey into the hotel bathroom and locked the door. Ronnie pressed close, trying to kiss him and convince him to just try it once so he would understand how good it felt. Smokey angrily broke free, opened the door, and ran out of the hotel. From then on, he cut off every opportunity to be alone with Ronnie for 3 full months. They only met when the whole group was there or in the studio with other people around. No more private conversations, no more late-night meals, no more songwriting sessions with just the two of them, like before. 3 months later, Ronnie wrote a very long apology letter. He said he couldn't control his emotions, that he was very lonely, but he didn't want to lose the friendship or the work. He promised he would never let his personal issues affect the group again. Smokey eventually forgave him because he always valued the brother who had been with him since the poor days. And they continued working together, continued writing music, and continued creating hits well into the 1970s. 10. Warren Pete Moore. From explicit photos to emotional confessions, Pete Moore lived 2 lives in the shadows of Motown music. Warren Pete Moore was the quiet but extremely important member of the Miracles. He created the signature background vocals for Smokey Robinson's music and helped shape the legendary Motown sound. On the night of November 16, 1965, in Los Angeles, after a long and tiring show, Pete Moore invited Smokey up to his suite, saying he wanted to discuss new vocal arrangements for an upcoming song. Smokey walked in expecting to see sheet music and a tape recorder, but Pete went straight to a large closet in the room. He opened the door, revealing a big box full of old photos. Pete took out a few and handed them to Smokey. They were explicit photos of a man. The room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioner humming. Pete leaned against the closet and said he had never dared tell anyone in the group, but he only liked men and had been living that way for many years. He said he had recently been in a secret relationship with a dancer and nude model. The two had even planned to move in together as a couple, but that day the guy had broken up with him. Smokey didn't say anything for a few seconds, too shocked. He just looked at Pete for a long time and then patted his shoulder to comfort him. That night, they didn't talk anymore about personal matters. They went back to discussing harmonies as if nothing had happened. Smokey later said that was the first time he truly understood how hard Pete had to struggle to hide who he really was. From then on, Smokey became the only person Pete dared to confide in about his love life. On February 14, 1971, in New York. After a long late-night recording session, Pete and Smokey were the last two to leave the studio. It was freezing cold outside, and the streets were almost empty. They headed back to the same hotel. In the elevator, Pete stayed silent the whole time. When the elevator doors opened, Pete suddenly said he had been holding something in for many years, and he was exhausted from pretending. Pete told him straight that he had had feelings for Smokey for a very long time, ever since their school days and their first singing practices. How Pete said he had loved other men but had never stopped being attracted to Smokey. Ever since he came out about his sexuality and Smokey didn't pull away or judge him, Pete no longer wanted to hide these feelings. But he emphasized that he only wanted to say it once to get it off his chest. He wasn't expecting any response from Smokey. Smokey stood there for a long time, his eyes filled with shock and confusion, then said he respected Pete, but everything had to stay at the level of friendship and work. After that night, Smokey avoided being alone with Pete for 6 months. They only talked on the phone or in the studio when other people were around. 6 months later, Smokey finally calmed down. He no longer felt awkward being alone with Pete because he realized Pete had never crossed the line. Pete had never caused trouble, never let rumors affect the group, and was always the hardest working member. Smokey valued their friendship and respected Pete's contribution to the group. Pete was the quietest person in all of Motown. No parties, no scandals, no loud romances. Just music, the studio, and vocal arrangements. Pete was like the man behind the curtain. Nobody paid much attention to him, but without him, the group's music wouldn't have been complete. Pete had chosen silence, burying his feelings for Smokey until 1971 to protect the group, protect Motown, and protect their friendship. So this time, Smokey wanted to be the one protecting that friendship instead of harshly rejecting his friend. 9. Robert Bobby Rogers, Smokey's brother-in-law, once tried to kiss him and confessed his love for wearing women's clothes. Putting family relationships under long-term strain, Robert Bobby Rogers was the most energetic member of the Miracles, famous for his explosive dance moves on stage. He was also the cousin of Claudette, Smokey Robinson's first wife, the leader of the group, and a Motown icon. On June 18, 1966, Claudette's birthday party was held in Detroit. It was a cozy family gathering with soft music and everyone laughing and having a good time. But in the middle of the party, after he had been drinking quite a bit, Bobby Rogers suddenly pulled Smokey out onto the back balcony. It was dark, and a cool breeze brushed against their skin, still warm from the alcohol. Bobby started opening up. He told Smokey that during previous tours, he had once had a secret relationship with a member of a male group in Philadelphia. Smokey laughed it off, thinking Bobby was just drunk and talking nonsense. But Bobby kept going. He said he had kept this inside for a very long time, not daring to tell anyone because of his family, the group, and his reputation. Then Bobby looked Smokey straight in the eyes and said he had been attracted to him ever since Smokey became his brother-in-law. Bobby put his hand on Smokey's shoulder and whispered that their bond was deeper than just being in-laws. Smokey immediately pushed his hand away and went back inside the house without saying a word, trying to convince himself that Bobby was just acting out because he was drunk. After that party, Smokey still tried to act normal at family gatherings, but he started avoiding being alone with Bobby. Everything seemed to stop there until 3 years later, at the end of September 1969 in Las Vegas. After a big show, Bobby invited Smokey up to his hotel room to talk. Smokey thought it was about the tour schedule or new dance moves. But when he entered the room, Bobby had already downed several glasses of the bottle of liquor sitting open on the table. He turned on some romantic music, closed the curtains, and pulled out a bag from the closet. Inside the bag were performance clothes, but there were also short dresses and other women's items. Bobby said he liked wearing these outfits, dancing in front of the mirror, and imagining he was performing for a special audience. Just by looking at Bobby's eyes at that moment, Smokey immediately understood that the special audience was him. Bobby started getting worked up, complaining that he had always had to play the role of a strong man, but inside him was a completely different person. Smokey listened for a while and felt overwhelmed. He stood up to leave the room right away. But Bobby boldly stepped forward, hugged Smokey from behind, and said he had held these feelings in for too long. Being cousins, friends, and co-workers, all those relationships were suffocating him. Bobby even tried to kiss Smokey on the neck, but Smokey panicked, broke free, and stepped back several paces. Smokey said this had to stop immediately, for the family, for Claudette, and for the whole group. Bobby stood there frozen, unable to say anything more. After that day, Smokey cut off all contact with Bobby for 8 full months. They only spoke when they were working. The other group members and Claudette at the time only felt the atmosphere was a bit strange, but no one knew what had happened. 8 months later, Bobby cautiously apologized, saying he didn't want to hurt the family and didn't want to ruin the friendship or the music they had built together. He promised he would never cross the line again. Smokey eventually let it go, not because he forgot everything, but because Bobby was family, Claudette's cousin, the man who had shared so many stages, so many tours, and so many years building their name with him. Smokey was one of the very few people who knew the real Bobby, and he kept that secret for many years to protect the family, protect the group, and protect that golden era of Motown. 8. Marv Tarplin. The haunting, melancholic guitar melodies of Marv Tarplin actually came from his hidden gay secret. Marv Tarplin was considered the sixth member of the Miracles, and he created the unforgettable guitar melodies for The Tracks of My Tears and Going to a Go-Go, and accompanied Smokey Robinson at Motown for many years. In early October 1965 at Hitsville Studio, after finishing the recording of The Tracks of My Tears, almost everyone had left. Only Marv Tarplin and Smokey Robinson stayed behind to listen to the guitar solo again. The studio was quite dark, with only a dim yellow light and the steady sound of the tape running. Marv sat holding his guitar, playing the sad melody they had just recorded one last time to compare. The sound was so soulful, it felt like it was telling a story. Smokey said the guitar part sounded very sad, like something was hidden deep inside. Marv stayed silent for a moment, then suddenly admitted that yes, he was hiding a lot of things. He said he had a secret relationship with a male sound engineer at Motown, and he had never dared tell anyone else. Marv said every time he played such a sad guitar part, it was because he couldn't live his truth in real life, so he poured all his emotions into the music. Marv said he always felt lonely, even though he was constantly in the studio, on stage, or on tour with everyone. Smokey sighed, understanding Marv's pain. From that day on, Smokey always protected Marv from the nasty rumors floating around the Detroit music scene. Many years later, in March 1975 in Detroit, when Smokey had already started his solo career, a drunk Marv showed up at Smokey's house one evening with his guitar, saying he wanted to play a new melody for him. They sat in the living room. Marv played a very sad, very slow piece that sounded like a goodbye. After he finished, Marv sat quietly for a long time, then said Smokey was the person who understood him the most. For all those years, he had kept a very special feeling for him, but never dared to say it. Seeing Smokey still sitting there quietly listening, Marv slowly moved closer, put his hand on Smokey's shoulder, and whispered that he needed Smokey more than music itself. Smokey immediately stood up, pushed Marv's hand away, and said they should only be friends and colleagues. In that moment, the light in Marv's eyes seemed to go out. He looked up at the ceiling and let out a heavy sigh before leaving in silence. After that incident, Marv no longer initiated meetings with Smokey. They only talked on the phone when it was related to recording. Sometime later, Marv sent Smokey a very long letter. In it, he apologized for letting his personal feelings affect their friendship and work. He wrote that he would bury the memory of that evening in a place where no one could ever dig it up. Smokey read the letter, thought about it for a long time, and decided to forgive him. Because Marv wasn't just a guitarist, he was someone who had been with Smokey through many years, from the poor days in Detroit to becoming famous. Smokey later said that Marv Tarplin was someone who lived through emotion more than anyone he had ever met. Those sad guitar melodies of Marv's didn't come from nowhere. They came from a life where he had to hide who he really was. Marv didn't like parties, didn't like appearing in the media. He only liked the studio, his guitar, and quiet practice sessions. And maybe that's why Marv's guitar always carried such a strange sadness, gentle but haunting for a long time. And perhaps you've realized it too, without Marv, the Miracles' music wouldn't have had that deep emotional feeling. 7. William Billy Griffin. The man who replaced Smokey's voice once confessed his feelings during a falsetto training session. William Billy Griffin was the singer chosen to replace Smokey Robinson when he left the Miracles. He brought a soft, high falsetto that helped the group continue succeeding under the Motown roof during a very stressful transition period. On June 27, 1973, at the Motown office in Detroit, the first private vocal training session between Smokey and Billy Griffin took place. Smokey was already a major figure at Motown, while Billy was just stepping into the role of replacing a legend. There were only the two of them in the room, a piano, some sheet music, and a tape recorder. Billy tried a few falsetto passages while Smokey corrected every phrase and every breath. During the break, Billy stared at Smokey for a long time and said he had to confess something or he wouldn't be able to focus on singing. Billy told him that while singing in disco clubs in New York, he had always been attracted to strong, powerful, and talented men. And Smokey made him feel that way from the very first time they met. Billy added that he wanted to understand his own feelings better, then made a request that left Smokey stunned. He asked to try kissing him once. Smokey couldn't believe his ears. He ended the lesson immediately and told Billy to leave the office. After that, Smokey canceled all private training sessions for 4 months and only communicated with Billy through the manager. Sometime later, Billy had to come to Smokey's house to apologize, saying he truly respected Smokey as a teacher and guide. Billy claimed the request had just been a silly joke from a young guy. Smokey eventually accepted the apology because Billy had enough talent to become an important successor and keep the Miracles' name alive. For a whole year after that, Billy never repeated the joke. But in mid-November 1974, something happened that Smokey would never forget. In the backyard of Smokey's house in Detroit, he hosted a small barbecue. Everyone ate, talked, and gradually went inside. In the end, only Smokey and Billy were left sitting outside. It was dark, and the backyard still carried the smell of grilled food in the air. Billy had been drinking and was talking more than usual. He started complaining about the pressure of replacing a legend. Billy said he always felt he had to prove himself, sing better, perform better, become a new version while still carrying Smokey's shadow. Then the conversation suddenly turned to personal life. Billy said he wasn't like Smokey, who could live freely and openly. He had secrets that, if exposed, could destroy his career. Right after that, Billy talked about his discreet relationships with men. Smokey felt a lump in his throat listening to it. So the joke from a year earlier hadn't really been a joke. But Smokey didn't react harshly. He only said it was Billy's private business, and he didn't want to hear too many details about his student's personal life. After that evening, Smokey greatly reduced one-on-one meetings with Billy, only seeing him when there was work or other people around. A few weeks later, Billy called to apologize and said he had only spoken so much because the pressure was too great. He said having to hide his personal life had made him lose emotional control for a while. He promised from now on he would focus only on the music. Smokey didn't hold it against him anymore because, after all, Billy had helped the Miracles create new hits and kept the group going after Smokey left. 6. Eddie Kendricks. The legendary falsetto voice of the Temptations once whispered an invitation to become lovers with Smokey. Eddie Kendricks was the famous falsetto voice of the Temptations, the man who created that soft, high male singing style that captivated audiences. His talent made Smokey Robinson particularly admire him and see him as a major musical inspiration. On the night of April 29, 1965, backstage at the Apollo Theater in New York, the Temptations and the Miracles performed together, and the crowd went wild. After the show, the dressing room gradually emptied, with footsteps echoing sparsely down the long hallway. Eddie Kendricks suddenly pulled Smokey Robinson into a dimly lit corner of the dressing room. Smokey was confused about what was happening when Eddie leaned close to his ear and whispered in a very soft falsetto, and almost like a murmur, "Your voice makes me want to hear you moan every night." Smokey struggled in shock and even accidentally punched Eddie in the jaw. Holding his aching chin, Eddie quickly claimed he was only joking with Smokey. Even though he said it was a joke, afterwards Smokey still felt uncomfortable and tried to keep his distance. He only maintained a professional relationship because he greatly admired Eddie's voice. But Smokey would soon realize that Eddie's words that night were not just a joke. In early January 1970, in freezing cold weather at Detroit Airport, the VIP lounge before a late-night flight was quite quiet, with only occasional flight announcements. Everyone was dozing off from exhaustion. Eddie sat next to Smokey, still holding an empty liquor bottle. He whispered that they were both men who sang in high voices, but both understood the feeling of being different, and both lived under the pressure of having to maintain a masculine image in front of the public. Smokey nodded, acknowledging that those pressures were real. But before he could reply, Eddie said outright that he wanted the two of them to share that pressure in a more intimate, more honest way during this trip. Smokey froze and turned to look at Eddie for a few seconds. He didn't know what to say and didn't want to make a scene, so he quietly changed his seat on the flight to sit with another member of the group. After this incident, Smokey cut off all personal contact with Eddie. Sometime later, Eddie apologized. Once again, he said he had let the joke go too far and promised it would never happen again. Smokey continued to stay silent because he couldn't accept that excuse. But they still worked together out of respect for each other's talent. Smokey later said Eddie was like the musical muse of Motown, the person who inspired the way male falsetto was built. But few people knew that, for a while, Smokey had been Eddie's muse. 5. Paul Williams. The dance soul of the Temptations once tried to pull Smokey into bed because he couldn't stand hiding his gay life anymore. Paul Williams was the dance soul of the Temptations, bringing explosive stage energy and intense emotion to every move. Smokey Robinson always saw Paul as a younger brother who needed protection in the high-pressure Motown world. One afternoon in July 1967, in the dance rehearsal room at Hitsville, USA, after everyone else had left, Paul Williams sat down on the wooden floor and pulled Smokey Robinson down to sit across from him. Paul confided that he was in a very deep relationship with a male backup dancer. Paul's voice trembled, and then he started crying. He said he was attracted to the gentleness and the feeling of being protected when he was with his lover, but there was a huge barrier of prejudice between them. Paul earnestly asked Smokey for advice because Smokey was the most approachable person in the group. Of course, Smokey had no prejudice against Paul. He patted his shoulder, comforted him, and encouraged him that everything would be okay. After that, Smokey started paying more attention to Paul because he knew Paul was struggling with both his health and his mental state. Smokey never imagined that this care would make Paul think differently about their relationship. Then on September 28, 1972, at a hotel in Detroit while the Temptations were on tour, the phone in Smokey's room rang around 2 a.m. Paul called, slurring his words, saying he needed to see him urgently. When Smokey rushed up to Paul's room thinking there had been an accident, Paul was completely drunk. The room was pitch dark except for a very weak nightlight. As soon as Smokey approached the bed, Paul grabbed him and said he was exhausted from having to live as someone else in front of the public. Then, while Smokey was still stunned, Paul tried to pin him down on the bed and mumbled that surely Smokey was lonely too and cared about him more than just as a friend. When Paul was about to press his lips to Smokey's, Smokey snapped out of the nightmare, pushed Paul away hard, and ran out of the room. After that night, Smokey avoided all contact with Paul for 6 months. Sometime later, Paul tearfully apologized, saying he was falling apart because his lover had left him, because of the pressure of fame, because his health was declining, and because the secret life had become unbearable. Smokey understood that Paul was living in a very deep inner tragedy, so he showed forgiveness once again. Smokey continued to support Paul at work and tried to help him keep his place in the group until Paul passed away in 1973. 4. Melvin Franklin. The legendary bass voice of the Temptations once confessed a secret relationship with a male poet. Melvin Franklin was the pillar bass voice of the Temptations, providing the solid foundation for the whole group. Contrary to his powerful stage image, in real life he was quiet, loved meditation, reading books, and talking about philosophy. Smokey Robinson saw him as a special soulmate. One day in mid-May 1969, in the backyard garden of Melvin's house in Detroit, the afternoon was very peaceful. The two sat drinking tea and talking about life, fame, and the pressures of being a celebrity. Melvin always liked talking about spirituality and how people wear many different masks when living in society. As an example, Melvin openly admitted that he too was living a masked life. He had a secret boyfriend who was a black poet living in Detroit. Melvin said they usually met at night. After being intimate, they would meditate together in long silence, as if two souls were connecting without needing words. Smokey just listened quietly, then smoothly changed the subject to music. He never wanted to dig into anyone's private life, and certainly didn't want to comment on anyone's sexuality. After that afternoon, Smokey still comfortably met Melvin to talk about philosophy and life, but he always avoided mentioning personal romantic matters. And Melvin never brought up that love story again. Smokey understood that even though there had been a moment of openness, Melvin probably didn't want anyone digging too deep into his private life. Later, Smokey always described Melvin as gentle, loyal, and deeply introspective, someone who simply carried too many things he could never say in public. 3. Filipe Wyn, the Spinners' lead singer, tried to set Smokey up on a fishing boat. Filipe Wyn was the main vocalist of the Spinners, one of the most powerful and versatile soul voices to come out of Detroit. Smokey Robinson always saw Wyn as part of the Detroit music family and held his talent in very high regard. In late August 1979, a small boat drifted on Lake St. Clair near Detroit. It was a weekend fishing trip that Filipe Wyn had invited Smokey Robinson on to relax after the Spinners moved to Atlantic Records. That afternoon, the lake was very calm, with a light breeze and not many boats around. When the boat had gone far from shore and out of sight of others, Wyn turned off the engine and let it drift freely. As Smokey was about to sit down, cast his line, and listen to the gentle sound of water against the hull, Wyn suddenly pointed toward another boat not far away. Smokey looked and saw it was a similar boat with two white men on board, one tall and lean, the other a bit heavy-set. The two boats quickly came alongside each other. Then the two white men stepped onto Wyn's boat. Wyn happily hugged the tall man and then gave him a passionate kiss right on the lips in front of Smokey. Smokey was about to nod hello when he froze. Wyn, still holding his boyfriend around the waist, introduced the other man to Smokey. It was his boyfriend's brother. The guy seemed a bit slow after a serious fever. Smokey quickly shook hands with the two white men with a friendly smile, completely off guard. After talking for a while, Wyn suddenly said that Smokey seemed to have a real connection with the slow guy. The more he talked, the more excitedly Wyn tried to play matchmaker, making Smokey's smile become more and more forced. When Wyn deliberately placed Smokey's hand together with the other man's, Smokey couldn't take it anymore. He yanked his hand away from Wyn, climbed onto the other boat, angrily scolded him, and quickly rowed back to shore. After this incident, Smokey reduced his collaboration and contact with Wyn to the bare minimum. Basically only business once a year. 16 months later, at the end-of-year party in 1980, Wyn found Smokey for a private talk. He said he knew he had gone too far and didn't want their friendship to end this way. By then, Wyn's health had already started to decline, and he said he didn't want to carry regret to the end of his life. Smokey eventually forgave him because he had always considered Wyn part of the big Detroit music family, and he didn't want to hold a grudge against an old friend. When Wyn passed away in 1984, many people in the music industry said he was one of the artists who had to hide his true identity the most to protect his career. And Smokey Robinson was one of the very few who knew the full story from beginning to end. 2. G.C. Cameron. The voice behind "It's a Shame" once held Smokey's hand and confessed he was attracted to him. G.C. Cameron was the lead voice on the hit "It's a Shame" by the Spinners, but later chose to stay at Motown instead of following the group. Smokey Robinson personally supported his solo career and saw him as one of the most promising voices on the label. In early July 1974, at a public golf course on the outskirts of Detroit, the morning was quite clear and the course wasn't crowded. G.C. Cameron invited Smokey Robinson to play golf as a thank you for helping with his solo career. The two played the first few holes normally, talking about music, Motown, and the new young singers. When they reached a fairly empty green, Cameron suddenly stopped, planted his golf club in the ground, and stood still for a long time. The atmosphere felt very strange. Cameron said there was something he had wanted to say for a long time, but hadn't had the courage. He brought up a recording session from the previous year when Smokey had accidentally walked into the dressing room and seen Cameron hugging another man. Cameron said Smokey had seen it, but pretended nothing happened. Cameron sighed and said straight out, "I like men." Smokey frowned in confusion, not understanding what the problem was with ignoring someone else's private life. Cameron said he had chosen to stay at Motown not only for his career, but also because he felt safe there. He wasn't scrutinized about his personal life like he would be elsewhere. Smokey nodded, showing sympathy. Cameron continued looking into Smokey's eyes and suddenly took his hand and confessed, "You are the person I admire the most at Motown. If you can accept that I like men, then can you also accept that I like you?" Cameron even almost managed to kiss Smokey, but was stopped at the last second. Smokey panicked, swung his golf club up, and immediately pushed Cameron's hand away. Then he turned and walked straight toward the exit without saying a word. From then on, Smokey cut off all personal contact with Cameron. Nearly a year later, Cameron sent flowers and a very long apology letter, saying he was always grateful to Smokey for helping him with his solo career and didn't want everything to end in silence and misunderstanding. Cameron said at the time he had been torn between his feelings for Smokey and Berry Gordy, unsure who he really loved. After being rejected by Smokey, he realized he wasn't as disappointed as he thought, meaning he didn't actually have those kinds of feelings for Smokey. It was only friendship between them. Smokey eventually let it go because he had always seen Cameron as a loyal friend to Motown and wanted to keep the peace in the big Detroit music family. For many years, stories about G.C. Cameron's same-sex relationships only existed as backstage whispers. People close to Motown all said that Cameron had chosen to stay at Motown because that was where Smokey Robinson and Berry Gordy were, special people who could protect him from rumors and keep his career from being ruined. 1. Major Harris. The soft soul icon once tried to grope Smokey and invited him to a hotel. Major Harris was a famous soul singer known for his soft, romantic style and the hit "Love Won't Let Me Wait." He was considered a soft soul icon and part of the high-level soul artist network that revolved around Smokey Robinson for many years. One late afternoon at the end of August 1975, on the beach by Lake Michigan after a soft soul performance, the sky was already getting dark, the wind blew gently, and waves lapped steadily against the sand. Major Harris invited Smokey Robinson for a walk along the beach because he wanted to talk about some personal matters. The two walked quite far, to a place where almost no one else was around. The space was so quiet, you could clearly hear their footsteps crunching on the sand. Harris suddenly stopped, turned to Smokey, and said there was something he wanted to confess. Harris began talking about his private life. He described in detail personal preferences he had never told anyone in the music industry. Harris said he liked lying on the sofa, playing romantic songs, and letting his lover run their fingers through his hair. He said that was the most romantic scene he had ever imagined. Then suddenly, Harris turned to Smokey and asked if he wanted to try that feeling at least once. Smokey's eyes widened. He couldn't believe his ears. Before he could open his mouth to refuse, Harris boldly leaned in, pressed close, and touched his hand to Smokey's lower body. Smokey panicked and shoved him hard, making Harris stumble and nearly fall backward. Right after that, Smokey walked straight back to the hotel and locked the door to his room, leaving Harris standing frozen in place. After this incident, Smokey avoided Harris for nearly a year. They only met when work absolutely required it. Smokey said it was the only time in his life a man had touched him there, so he couldn't stop being haunted by it. A year later, Harris couldn't stand Smokey's coldness anymore. He even came to his house and knelt down, saying he didn't want to lose Smokey because Smokey was the person he respected the most in the soul music industry. Smokey sighed, nodded half-heartedly, and things could never go back to the way they were. They still worked in the same soul artist network and still appeared at events together, but the distance always remained. You see, the stories behind the scenes are sometimes even more dramatic than the performances the audience sees on stage. What Smokey Robinson revealed has made many people look back at that entire soul music era with a different perspective. Behind those sweet love songs and voices that captivated millions of female fans, there may have been lives very different from the image shown to the public. What do you think about this story? Leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow more behind-the-scenes stories few people know. Shocking secrets in the music world and entertainment industry that we will keep updating in the next video.